Good evening and welcome to the 5th Annual MIT Enterprise Forum's Venture Lab Meet the Angels event. I'm Dave Watts, co-chair of the MIT Venture Lab. The mission of the MIT Enterprise Forum is to inform, connect, and coach technology entrepreneurs, enabling them to rapidly transform ideas into world-changing companies. We are a global network of local organizations inspired by MIT and open to the world. Our vision is to build inspired by MIT. The vision is to build a better world by accelerating the creation and growth of world-class technology companies. We are volunteer-based. If you'd like to help us with our mission, please let us know, either by contacting us through the MITWA, that's mitwa.org website, or talking to anyone who has a ribbon of this sort on their badge, purple colored. This is the next to the last Venture Lab event this year. The final event is Demo, which is kind of the culmination of our year's programs. And this will be held on June 11th in this room. This is intended for entrepreneurs who have something new and innovative to demonstrate, as opposed to presenting a business plan or a pitch to investors. So if you know of anyone who has an invention, maybe you yourself, would like to show it to the world, at least to the audience, we would invite you to please apply on our website. Applications should be open on the website next week. I don't think we have our form up there yet, but it should certainly be up by the end of next week. We will select a number of companies to present to a screening committee, and then from the screening, we will pick, I believe we decided 6 finalists who will then present to a panel of judges for the recognition and award of the demo winner. And we've had a number of companies come through that event in the past who've gone on to do great things. So I hope that you'll both come to that and also let anybody know who might be interested in applying. Our final MIT Enterprise Forum event will be on May 20th. It's called Science Fiction, Catalyst for Reality. And I'd suggest going to our website for additional details on that. Should be a fun event. I know Greg Bear is going to be there representing the science fiction portion. And we'll explore the connection between science fiction and reality. I'm going to keep my introductory comments short. This is a meeting where we want the focus to be on the audience and the participants, especially because we have a large number of both. And I would like to thank Bryan Brewer for helping to pull all of these fine people together to participate in the program. And I'd like to thank them for, once again, standing, or perhaps it's sitting, before us to talk about and answer questions about one of the most important topics in the life of any startup, financing. Just very quickly, how many people are here because they're looking for financing or thinking about looking for financing? Oh, that's great. Definitely the right place. Thank you. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, without whom, of course, none of this would be possible. I would also like to thank Kirby Bartholomew, my co-chair, and the other members of the Venture Lab team, whose names are included in tonight's printed program, for helping to produce and execute the program. Again, I'd like to offer special thanks to Bryan Brewer, a former Venture Lab team member, and tonight's moderator for his extensive and generous help. Bryan is founder of Funding Quest, a company dedicated to helping early stage companies do what they need to in order to get funding. He's also well known in the local startup community and works with both companies and investors to create a win-win scenario. So Bryan, with that, I will turn the program over to you and let you manage the event.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. This is one of the most fun events that happens in Seattle because of these folks over here. We get all these knowledgeable folks who know a lot about angel investing to come and share their knowledge and wisdom with the crowd. And so, first of all, I'd like to mention a couple of words of thanks. If you look in your program, you'll see an insert in here that's Pacific Northwest Angel Groups. You've probably already seen this. So many thanks to Rebecca Lovell, the City of Seattle Startup Liaison, who did all this data collection, and many thanks to all the representatives of the groups here who provided the information. This is an annual event, and we do it in the spring like this because it gives the angel groups time to collect their data from the past year. So I haven't added this up specifically, but I think there's at least $50 million on here that have been represented just by these groups in 2014. I also want to acknowledge a few other folks who are not here and groups. One is Seraph Capital Forum, which is an all-women's investing group. They declined to participate this year. Jennifer Olson said they're just kind of regrouping this year, so they didn't have much to report, and hopefully they'll be back and in full strength next year. I also want to mention that there are two regional angel groups that are very active. One is the Tacoma Angel Network, obviously in Tacoma, and the other one, the newly renamed Bellingham Angel Investors, which is also very active. We just, with 10 folks on this panel, we had to try to limit it somehow, and so they got left out. So, but they were very gracious about it, and wanted to mention that they're available and part of the network as well. So, with let's see, was there anything else? With that said, I think what I'll do is go ahead and just I'll just acknowledge everyone, so you introduce everyone, so you can know who they are, and then I'll start with some questions. And this is actually a pretty easy event for me tonight because they do most of the talking. So all I have to do is kind of throw out a few words, and lots of these folks here have lots of information to share. So we'll look forward to that. Also, we will go for maybe 45 minutes or an hour with the panel discussion here, and then the best part is we'll open it up for Q&A. And when we do that, there will be a couple of volunteers that have microphones to go around, and so you can speak your question in the microphone because we're doing a video recording of the whole event here tonight. Okay, so without further ado, and I'm going to have to get over here so I can see everybody. Dan Rosen, Alliance of Angels. Sherry Calvert, who's saying now, of Keiretsu Forum Northwest. Kenny Byrne, Zino Society. Chris DeVore, Founders Co-op. Gary Ritner, Puget Sound Venture Club. Caddy, Wings. Lars Johansson, Element 8. Welcome, Haresh. You made it. Haresh Bed, Thai Angel Group Seattle. John Seacrest, who's representing the Seattle Angel Conference. And then Josh Mayer, who's representing the Seattle Angel Fund. So let's give a big round of applause. All right, so I think I'd like to start out by just maybe, and you folks have microphones to pass around as well. So we'll start. So let's just start with you, Dan. And if you could give just a brief introduction about your group and anything you want to mention about your group that's unique or special or that you're proud of that you want the audience to know about your angel group. So go ahead, Dan. Take it away.
The Alliance of Angels was formed. Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
Was formed in 1997. We have about 135, 140 active members. Most of our members are doing investment at least one a year and sometimes many more. We invest typically about $10 million a year in about 20 to 30 companies year in, year out. For the last 8 or so years have been acknowledged as one of the top 10 most active angel groups in the United States. We invest only in the Pacific Northwest. We don't do deals outside the region. We feel that there's a very strong home court advantage that we like to take advantage of. And if you're here to get funding, you shouldn't be thinking of angels just as a source of funding, because we invest a lot more than just money. Our members have a hugely broad base of experience across the 140 members, and they bring to the table That experience, a network, contacts, we syndicate deals across the country with other angel groups, and that works because people respect our members more than anything. Last thing I'll mention is that we just closed our second sidecar angel fund. It's $6.6 million. It invests in a proportionate basis with every deal that the Alliance of Angels members do. So that's a brief summary, and I'll pass it on to Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Zins Calvert from Keiretsu Forum. We are the largest, I believe, angel investor group in the world. We have 38 chapters worldwide, about 1,400 members globally. Here in the Northwest, I have about 320, and we have 7 chapters. So it's Vancouver, BC, Spokane, Victoria, Boise, Kirkland, Seattle, and then Portland. So there's 7 chapters total. We funded last year $32 million into 37 companies. We look at 48 deals a year. So of the 48 deals year over year, we funded 75% of the companies that come through since 2010 when I came back on board with Nathan. So, we are the most expensive, I will say that. We do not only do local deals like Dan does, we do global deals as well because we are a global network. Once a company has earned the right to move to another chapter within Keiretsu, you have to start in your own backyard, but then you can syndicate globally around the world if you want to. One company, Savara, raised from 22 of the 38 chapters. They raised money from 22 chapters, or 21. So it was amazing. But the global network is huge. We have 10 committees. We focus on all types of technology, fashion, life science, just everything. So a little bit different. I think that, the other angel groups, I love all of these guys, so I'm just honored to be up here with them. But we all have a little bit different focus, and so we all play well together, I think. So.
Thanks, guys. I'm Kenny Byrne. I'm with Zeno Society. We're another angel group in town. One thing that makes us unique is we have different themed events. We have forums every single month, and we have a large group of advisors and coaches that work with the companies that come through Zeno Society. That's really kind of our passion, which is really preparing companies for sale. And raising money is actually the first time you actually sell your business. You're selling a portion of it. So we really try and help companies that have spent sometimes many years building their company, getting it to where it's at, ready for funding, to actually prepare for sale. And that's a different way of thinking, a different way of looking at it, a different way of presenting it to potential investors as they compare different investment opportunities. So they are comparing your business as an investment versus many other businesses as potential investments. So really helping work with companies understand that process. That's certainly my passion and why I decided to join Zeno, because I was a coach with them for about 3 years before. I've also been a member of Keiretsu pretty much since you started. So we've kind of all been together for a long time. And like I like to say, is just like it takes a community to raise a family, it takes a community of angel groups to really raise companies. And if you can raise 125 from each of these angel groups, you'd be well on your way. So we all do things a little bit differently, and that's fine, just like each family does things differently. It's not a competitive environment. It's a very collaborative, cohesive environment. We all care a lot for each other and respect each other's processes, and we work together as much as we can. Zeno Society has about 100 active angel investors, and we are a membership organization, so people join as a member. One of the things that we encourage is building the relationship with potential investors. So we try and help you get into the process earlier, before you're actually raising capital, hopefully many months before, so that you can start building relationships with potential investors. And then that process becomes a lot more, it's an easier bridge to cross once you're actually in the raising money period. Other than that, on to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris DeVore and I represent 2 different but related organizations. One, Techstars Seattle, which is an early stage accelerator program. We run an annual cycle where we take applications. Applications are actually open now until April 30. We'll select 10 to 12 companies. They'll come sit in our offices in Startup Hall in the University District, get basically bombarded with feedback from a lot of experienced entrepreneur mentors, and then we'll have a demo day in the fall to help them raise their first round of institutional seed capital. I also run with 2 other partners, Founders Co-op, which is a seed stage venture fund. We run run $30 million in total. We just announced today the close of our third fund, a $20 million pool, and we aim to be catalytic institutional support for the first institutional raise that a company will raise on its way to raising institutional venture capital, usually out of town, down in the valley, sometimes here as well. Very narrowly focused on venture grade software opportunities based in the Pacific Northwest, so our aperture is quite small and quite specific, but I think that corresponds. Again, there's lots of folks sitting up here that do different things. That's our slice of the market and where we try to excel, but we try to also refer deals that don't fit our model to other folks who sit up here.
I'm Gary Ritner with the Puget Sound Venture Club, and I'm fighting a little cough. This is our 30th year. We're planning our annual our 30th celebration, September 17th. We haven't picked a place. So we're a small group. We got 21 members. 25 we would like to have 25 members. Right now we got 21. Last year we did a little over 10 million. We do count what the members do away from the club, and probably half that 10 million were not Puget Sound Venture Club presenters. The 10 million represents about 54 companies. Where our sweet spot is, the product's done, you're looking for marketing money. We try to have one low-tech presenter at our monthly meeting, and most of the time we can't find one, so if you got a low-tech product out there, we want to talk. And I think that covers us.
Hi, I'm Tom Cademy. Is this working? Yeah, good. So I'm co-chair of the Wings Angel Investing Group. We are, I guess, a boutique in the angel world in that we work only with life sciences deals. When we say life sciences, we're looking at medical devices, diagnostics, healthcare IT, mobile medical apps, healthcare delivery. We are about 40 angels strong. We meet on a quarterly basis and screen maybe 15 to 20 deals to get 3 folks that can present at our annual meetings. We are about 5 years old and growing quickly, so if you've got a medical device deal or a life science deal, we'd like to talk to you.
Lars Johansson, Eliminate, and what's different about our group is that we are actually just like the previous guy here, sector specific. And our sector is clean tech, and the core of that, of course, is energy, not necessarily energy generation, which most people think about, but distribution, management, storage of energy, its efficiency as well. We also start to see more and more water-related deals, as you might have heard from Governor Brown in California. We have some issues in different places with water. We've also seen some agriculture deals recently that have gotten a lot of interest for agricultural technologies and crops that can grow in harsh conditions. And we are a member organization, and we meet on a monthly basis and have our meetings. And as Dan pointed out, we do a lot of collaboration with other groups. Because we are sector specific, we also do deals, which is different from some of the other groups. We do deals all over North America. So this year we actually added Hawaii to the list, which we were excited about, in addition to some more companies in DC, New York, California, and of course around here, because we do most of the deals around here. And we collaborate with other groups across the country that have that clean tech interest, and also very closely with all of these guys, but also, for example, I think Bryan mentioned Bellingham. We had our first due diligence meeting for last week's presenters on Wednesday, and we actually had the Bellingham folks with us on the WebEx and the conference call because they were looking at the same company. So we do a lot of collaboration, both internally as a group in terms of due diligence, screening, and so forth, and as I said, also with other groups. But the investments so far have been individual investments, and you can look at the stats in your papers. But to complement that, we are actually also in the process of launching a fund, because we want to be able to have an increasing impact. Our members are very passionate about entrepreneurships and about startups, but also most of them are very passionate about clean tech and having an impact. And we think that we can further our ability to have that impact by launching a fund, and that's what we're in the process of doing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to be on that board of the company in Hawaii or even Switzerland. That would be better. I'm Haresh Ved. I run the Thai Angels Group Seattle. I'll start off with a little bit of history. Thai is a non-profit organization which was launched in '92. Today we have more than 60 chapters in 17 countries with more than 2,500 charter members across the globe. The Thai Seattle chapter we launched in 2000 and have been fortunate to be involved with it since then. 2 years ago we decided that until we bring in the element of capital into the equation of our vision of promoting entrepreneurship, it wasn't complete. So other than all these different programs we have, we introduced the Thai Angels Group Seattle 2 years ago. So now we've grown to 110 plus accredited investor members. In the last 2 years, we made more than 10 deals with 3.6 million invested from our members. About 35 of us are really active. I say really active, meaning they've actually written checks. And I'm waiting for the rest to step up and do the same, hopefully soon. Typically, we focus in the Northwest, although we've done one deal in New York, a Techstar company, which was in Seattle, so we just consider it to be a Seattle company. It's ironic, unlike many other things, you write a check and you get work, people to do work for you, but in our case, we actually write the check and start working for the company. Which is what we look at in a company. If there's any value that we can add or we can fill a void, that's when we are excited to work with the company. And I'm truly honored and humbled to be here, to be the face of a fantastic group of members we have. On an average, we have about 25 years of experience per member times 100, which is what entrepreneurs actually get when they come to tax. So I'm really happy and excited to be the face of this, not even a pretty face, but to be the face of this. Thank you.
So I'm John Seacrest. I'm at the Seattle Angel Conference. The focus of the Seattle Angel Conference is creating new angel investors. I think about 9% of the population in Seattle, somewhere around 70,000 people are qualified to angel invest. And of that, about 1% actually write checks. And we think it could be like 2% or 3%. And so we create a program, which is a 12-week program, which trains angels how to be better angel investors by doing angel investing. So this round, we're in round number 7. We've been doing it, we do it twice a year. 40 people put $5,000 into a pot. We raise $200,000. We go through a bunch of companies and take them from 50 down to 6 finalists. And our final presentation will be on May 20th, same date as the other thing going on. And we will essentially have evaluated, done deep due diligence on these companies and pick one. And so it's a slow motion startup or investment, but the process creates a discussion where everybody learns a vocabulary which is shared among a wide range of perspectives. And so now the marketing guys and the technical guys and the financial guys all learn what the other guy is thinking, and in the end they can learn how to invest well, because we want more people investing well. It's not necessarily a great way to create a portfolio. The Seattle Angel Fund was the answer to that question from our perspective. But our goal is to create more active angel investors, people who engage with their money and their time and their relationships to drive things. We produced approximately $1 million worth of investment in the last 3 years, and we've created 110 new angel investors. We aim for 20 new people each cycle, so we're always trying to pull new people in. But because we're all new, we're also looking at companies. I think we're the earliest of all of these. We look for people who are at or near first revenue and perhaps don't have a full team, perhaps have other things that are a problem for them from a perspective of the other groups, and are willing to put up with a bunch of new angel investors asking a lot of questions that nobody knows the answer to, and together we find that answer, and hopefully out of that comes a great investment.
I'm with the Seattle Angel Fund, although I'm not the person who runs the Seattle Angel Fund. Susan Preston runs the fund, but she's off in Mexico getting married. So I'm here in her stead. The Seattle Angel Fund is the brand new. We had our first meeting actually last month. It's a $1.2 million fund that is going to be invested in the course of 12 months. So it's a much different model than everyone else up here. The focus, although is similar in that we focus on the Northwest, we don't have a sector-specific focus. We don't necessarily have a stage-specific focus, but it is a active angel-driven process, which is somewhat similar to what's happening with the Seattle Angel Conference, where all of the angel investors are putting their capital in and collectively making a decision about how to deploy that capital to entrepreneurs over the course of 12 months. And so the goal is we do this every year.
Okay, thank you, Josh. So I wanted to jump into the next phase of the program here, and this will be kind of just questions for the panel. And this is to jump, or anybody to jump in anytime you want to say something, and pass the mic around. So let's start by what I'd like to any of the panelists to share with the group is what's hot these days. What are their business sectors or technologies or anything else about a deal that you're seeing in the last 6 to 12 months that's really coming on strong? Anybody want to jump on that one? Go ahead, Dan.
Good deals, well priced.
We had 47% life science, even though that's not our bellywick, that would be more to wings. Last year, of the 32 million, more than half of it went to life science. So life science is picking up here locally.
I'll jump in if nobody wants to.
Yeah.
The early death of clean tech is much exaggerated. It's actually in 2014, clean tech has actually really come back very strongly. It is true that after some bubbly years, peak years in the late 2000s, where a lot of easy money going into solar and biotech, there was a bit of a downturn. But we've seen a lot of companies through that period live through that period and also get their first funding through that period, and we're hoping that some of them will come out really good. And in 2014, we really saw a big uptick even in VC money. See some strategic investors in the meantime fill the void, and also see angels playing an increasingly important role as part of that.
Well, we're seeing cannabis deals, aren't we, Michael? A lot of cannabis opportunities, both in delivery, infrastructure, accessories, all that kind of stuff. We're not necessarily running all of them through, but last month we do themed forums. Every month, Xeno is actually a competition. We also have a fund. It's an annual fund, and it's voted on by a majority of the members in that fund. There's usually between 15 and 20 members in the annual fund, and so we'll meet quarterly to review the semifinalists that are presented every month, and the fund members are actually in our audience every month, and so they'll vote on the quarterfinalists and then the finalists. So it's kind of fun, and then we'll actually take them through a due diligence process, and some of our investor members will actually participate in that due diligence process, and then we'll decide which companies they actually invest in, and so that's a pretty fun process. It's a very active process, keeps the investors involved, and a lot of angel investors that are new, much like the Seattle Angel Conference, is a great way for them to learn from investors that have been doing it for 20 or 30 years. I know when I'm in those meetings, I'm much quieter than other meetings because these are some really, really savvy investors, and you want to just do a lot of listening. Cannabis are deals that we're seeing a lot. We're also seeing some shopping, a lot of shopping deals and shopping facilitation, group shopping facilitation, a lot of products, a lot of interesting products. And in fact, lastly, we have one of the original sharks from the Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington's going to be with us in a month and a half at one of our events, and so we're ramping up on product offerings, product type companies for that event.
Just really quick, another thing that I've seen locally or just globally is impact investing. So we're getting a lot of requests for impact investment, and we've decided at Keiretsu just to allow an extra 30 seconds to the presenter if they have an impact on a social, a different impact investment. But we're being approached by groups from across the country and around the world about impact investing. So I'm curious of my fellow panelists, are you seeing the same thing?
Well, Sherry, that was my next question, so it was a good segue. So feel free to jump in on either of those. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, we tend to see a broad spectrum of almost any kind of imaginable deal. We see about 30 companies a month that get screened down to 6 for final screening and 3 to 4% to the members, and about 60% of the deals that wind up presenting to our members get funding. We average about $400,000 per company, and other angel groups tend to follow us into the deals we do to at least the tune of what we do in those deals. But we do see a lot of impact deals. The problem we have with a lot of impact deals is while they tug at your emotional heartstrings, they're lousy businesses. And so we insist that the things we invest in be good businesses and make sense from the investors. Most of our members are very charitable by nature and do a lot of charity investing. I have my own charities that I like to give to, primary among them the Humane Society and College for Veterinary Medicine, animal charities. But I do that for charity, and I try to very clearly differentiate between charity and investing.
I'll jump in on that. I think at Element 8 we've actually done impact investing since we were founded in 2006, but we do so by choosing the segment. I very much agree with Dan that we wouldn't look at a company that wouldn't have as good a business opportunity as any other company. We think that choosing the segment and by having companies that can do good business and also bring sustainability forward, that's a good choice, but the business has to stand on its own. It can't be just a feel-good thing.
I'd like to jump in. It's exactly the same thing. To us, we don't differentiate whether it's social or impact or anything. At the end of the day, does the business make sense is what we want to invest. I just wanted to share the previous question. We've seen a lot of an explosion in big data deals. And I'm hoping that there'll be some software in there to create some sort of intelligence to help us determine which will succeed. But at the end of the day, most of them end up being nothing better than a sophisticated Excel or something. So, but that's one thing we are heavily invested in.
One of the impact things that isn't being mentioned is the SVP Fast Pitch, which is the Social Venture Partnership Program, has something that looks remarkably close to the Seattle Angel Conference, where you have a bunch of investors create a fund and then sort through and invest in some impact deals. And they have a for-profit track and a non-profit track, and their date this year I think is October 27th, and they'll run a bunch of classes in the summer. So there are several groups that are attracting specifically companies with impact. My personal belief is that all investing is impact investing. So you want to evaluate your impact for every company you invest in and choose the ones that make the world look like how you want it to look like. I don't preach the impact part of the Seattle Angel Conference, but I act it. And so try to find good companies that are both good and produce results are important.
So we see a lot of, well, not a lot, but we have seen several global health deals try to come through Wings. They tend to struggle with their business model as well as their exit plan, so they're difficult for investors. That said, everybody would like to invest in those kinds of deals, and for the creative entrepreneur who can come up with a really solid business model, they are going to find, certainly in the city of Seattle, a lot of takers. So.
Anybody else want to jump in, or we're all set? All right, go ahead, Dan.
I'd like to add one last thing, sort of taking off on what John said. What could have more impact to our society, particularly our local economy, than creating another high-growth startup? I chaired the Public Policy Committee for the National Angel Capital Association for exactly that reason. If you're going to create government policy and do things that are going to help the economy of the United States and our local economy, go out and create a lot of new startups that are going to go hire a lot of high-growth jobs, high-potential jobs, and going to change the way the world works in a much more positive way. So I think, to your point, everybody on this panel does impact investing on that level. Because if you create great companies that have great exits, that just funnels more money back into the economy, more jobs created, more opportunities for our kids, and that's why we all do this.
Okay, thanks. So the next question is kind of a perennial favorite or maybe non-favorite. But I get this question a lot from entrepreneurs that I coach and clients I work with, and that is the question of a convertible note versus priced round. And a lot of folks who are at this the first time hear stories about both those methods of investing. Just briefly, a priced round is where you set the share price and you fix a valuation of the company before you take the money. A convertible note is where you take the money as a loan, but then it converts into equity, typically on the next round of funding. So those are two methods that are commonly used, especially here in Seattle. So I want to get the panel's opinion about those two methods, and also what's your experience in terms of your deal flow and who gets funded.
Got 2 hours?
No.
This is a complex topic. I know I have a reputation for hating convertible notes. I don't hate them, I do them. But they've got to be used appropriately. I have an audience of entrepreneurs in front of me who are going to be coming and presenting and pitching their deals. Know what you're doing. I am just helping a company work through the fact that they've now done their 5th convertible note without doing the round to follow. That's a disaster. Nobody will invest in that. We got them to get all their convertible notes to convert into a round. We're closing the round. It'll happen next week. But if your money is going to last more than 12 months, if you're raising more money in your convertible note than you need in your round, I can give you a list of 10 questions, and if you answer yes to any of them, do a price round, don't do a convertible note.
John? Or John's itching to go. Go ahead.
So we use a convertible note at the Seattle Angel Conference, mostly because the structure and solidity of the companies are unknown, and the pricing process looks a lot more complex than the convertible note process. But if we can come to agreement on price, we think that a straight priced round makes a lot more sense than a convertible note. But where we have an early company with no sales and we're placing a bet, then the expectation is they're going to get additional funding. Then the convertible note makes that conversation cheaper and faster. And our goal is to get them to move faster and get to the next round at a point where they've got traction and pricing makes much more sense. So knowing what the right place to use that tool and when to stop using it when you get to the point where you can do something cheaper and more effective with a price round.
In almost every scenario, the convertible note really favors the company, not the investor. In almost every scenario, and you can do your research and all that. So, with respect to relationships with investors, if you're looking to build relationships with investors, and one of the things I like to have people think about people that might invest in your first company, the same people that you might want to invest in your second, third, fourth, fifth company. It's about building relationships, and there's a certain amount of trust that is at risk when you do a convertible note because you're not actually doing it. So you're asking them to trust at another higher level that it's even going to convert at some point in time. And the savvier investors know that that's not a guarantee, and that they actually have to take action if you don't actually convert on time to protect themselves and their investment. So it's much more complicated. So if you're working with an investor that has invested in 20, 30 deals, if those were all convertible notes, can you imagine how much complexity they're having to juggle and manage upon maturity dates and all the other issues? So a lot of angel investors want it to be simple and just invest, get equity, and then hopefully they'll hear from the companies every month and kind of keep track of what's going on. So look at who your audience is, and your audience is the investors that hopefully are doing 10 or more deals possibly a year, or at least 5 a year. And if they're having to keep track of all the maturity dates and all the ins and outs and risks of convertible notes, you're asking them to do more work before they get into your deal. And that does put you a step behind straight equity deals.
We use converts most of the time at both Founders Co-op and Techstars. I think because we're explicitly focused on venture track opportunities, most venture investors don't want angels in the governance structure in particular to have kind of creepy preference, or there's lots of things that get done in early stage priced rounds that most traditional venture investors it's a no-fly zone for them. So the cleanest thing that you can do if you're going to be a venture if you're going to raise Series A venture, a high tier 1 venture, is convertible notes are super clean. Everyone knows how they work. Folks who do that kind of investing use them all the time, and it's by far the preferred way to get a clean A done. It's not to have a bunch of preference and pricing work that was done in a wonky kind of cast of thousands priced round that comes before an institutional A.
It might be appropriate to talk about the history of convertibles here a little bit, because nobody's mentioned caps. So convertibles been around forever, 20% discount to an A round, and the argument was Joe Smith invested, and took all the risk on the convertible, and then they did a nice A round at 10 million, and then he goes off at 8 million, and he's saying, hey, I didn't get paid for the risk that I took. So then they came up with the caps, where, in the example I just used, the cap would be 4 million, let's say. So you do an A round, 20% discount, but the 4 million is lower than the 20% discount. And I just thought I'd bring that up because nobody's talked about the cap.
No, that's all the notes that we're doing are notes with caps and discounts baked in.
So at tags, we definitely prefer price rounds. We've done a couple of convertible notes, but then cookie cutter notes do not cut for us. So we actually have to go and get some terms updated and changed. In the last, I think 4 to 5 deals we've done, we've had convertible notes converted to price rounds, and that's when we invested. So that's definitely the trend for us.
Yeah, just add to that quickly. We also, of course, prefer priced rounds, but we do convertible notes when it makes sense. But to Dan's point, it's really got to make sense, and you can't just come in because you've heard that you can punt on the valuation, and it's a lot easier to do the paperwork. It's got to be done properly. It's got to have a cap on it, and you got to have really some visibility into, is that Series A or Series B even realistic? And it's not just a note that's going to sit there for you.
So I'd just like to kind of add to if you were thinking about a venture institutional round in the next 6 to 12 months, a convertible note is a really, really nice way to do that. We see that a lot in the life sciences because they tend to take a lot of money to get off the ground, and that keeps it very, very clean.
No, I just want to mention one thing that Gary brought up was the cap. The valuing of the company is related to the cap. You're not necessarily valuing the company, but you're telling an investor if you are going to convert at a higher valuation, you set a lower bar to the value of the company if you raised a 20 million round or a 20 million valuation. And so whether you're doing a note or a convertible note or convertible equity or just pure equity, you still need to value the company. So notes aren't a way to avoid that necessarily. You are implying that there's a value to the company and the value to the investor and the entrepreneur in having a fair negotiation or conversation about what that number really should be, is that you're working together on the company at that stage. If you can't get a good agreement at that stage, then you're probably not going to work very well together long term either. So that I think that's many times more important than whether you're using a note or equity or convertible equity.
There's one other thing from an investor point of view that entrepreneurs should know. If you're doing equity and it's a regular kind of company, there are tax code implications to taking that equity. For quite a while now, we've had zero capital gains on qualified small business exits. The note does not give you that. You don't begin to start the clock on that or the valuation on it until it converts. So from an investor point of view, there's a very strong advantage from a tax point of view as well to have a price note with at the time you do your investment.
Could you get 1244 on a note, Dan?
You can't. You cannot. No.
You can't get 1244
No.
on a note.
And nor 1202.
Okay, thanks. So, got a quick question for the audience. How many of you have heard of crowdfunding? All right. Well, crowdfunding is turns out to be a multifaceted topic. There are various versions of it. Most people are familiar with crowdfunding in the form of Kickstarter, which is reward-based crowdfunding, where you don't actually get any equity in the company, but you get some kind of you get a T-shirt, maybe, or maybe a version of the product if it's a consumer product. There's also equity crowdfunding that was proposed by the SEC for it was part of the Jobs Act to allow non-accredited investors to invest through portals. That's not going to happen at least for another year, and who knows if it ever will. In the interim, there are a number of states, at least a dozen or so, that have implemented equity crowdfunding for non-accredited investors on the state level. In fact, Washington is one of those states, and I haven't heard of anybody using that Washington law yet. I think there have been 0 registrations, so it has some less appeal to folks. So there's equity crowdfunding that the SEC is working on the rules. There's state crowdfunding. There's reward crowdfunding like Kickstarter, but there are also several other types of crowdfunding that I want to ask some questions for the panel. And the first one has to do with the equity crowdfunding platforms for accredited investors, such as AngelList and Fundable and so forth. There are dozens of these. And so my question for the panel is, what is your view of those types of equity, those types of fundraising opportunities, and how would you advise an entrepreneur to use those or not use those in relation to also pitching to an angel group?
So almost all of those have, just like we have different perspectives, they have different perspectives. If you're going for money on 2 platforms you should be on are Gust and AngelList, so angel.co. We're finding at the Seattle Angel Conference, AngelList is very useful from a research point of view, finding companies that are seeking and finding out where they're at. We've got some people exploring the syndicates at AngelList, and those seem to be doing some interesting things and providing some opportunities that are interesting. We've seen several people look at things like Micro Ventures or Funders Club, or now Seed Invest, which are curated lists of companies, and we're not finding that particularly interesting. I haven't seen any of our members go into that. But the AngelList syndicates are the ones that I have seen people get value out of. But the thing that I'm personally afraid of is celebrity syndicates with no due diligence translating into money flowing and not producing returns. So I'm a little bit hesitant for that. And if I were on, we're starting at the bottom, so we're never seeing deals that have already been funded that way. But if I were some of these other groups and I saw a deal that was funded that way and then I came in at a later round, I would be a little bit nervous about who is on the cap table.
Yeah, but so we also have a fund of about, right now, it's a $10 million fund, and we are planning on syndicating those deals after they've been funded by the fund, if that makes any sense. So they're going to come through Keiretsu, they're going to receive their first set of funding. If we deem it a great deal and the people in the fund vote on it, then they will get extra funding from the fund. The goal, we haven't done it yet, the goal is then to syndicate those deals out from there and raise the additional capital on the other end, so not in the beginning.
Which platform?
Yes, on the outside. I don't know if he's using. This is all Nathan's side of the business, but the idea is that we're gonna syndicate these deals after they've raised Keiretsu, the fund.
So
It's circle up, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a real mistake, and I'll tell you why. It's a little arcane from a securities law point of view, but I helped draft the Jobs Act, and I'm not proud of it, and in particular this section of the Jobs Act. There's securities law prior to the Jobs Act. The only way that accredited investors could invest in your startup was something called 506B of the securities law. And the only way that that worked is you had to know the investor. You couldn't be a stranger. It had to be somebody you knew. And you could bring in other investors, but they all had to know you and know each other. And that was the reason that they allowed this to go without any registration and any legal complexity. You could just take their money and then file afterwards. Good thing. Worked really well for 30 years. But that was before the internet existed and information existed, and we thought, wouldn't it be good if you could do things like we're talking about here? The problem is the SEC completely screwed it up. They created a new section of securities law called 506C and put the burden on the entrepreneur, not the investor. If you take money from somebody through crowdfunding, accredited crowdfunding, like we're talking about here, AngelList, you have to know who every investor is, and you have to be reasonably assured that they're accredited. And that doesn't mean they sign a form and send it to you. That's no longer good enough. You now have to take on the responsibility to make sure they do. Now you can say, so what happens if they don't? Okay, 5 years from now, somebody's going to go sell a company, and they're going to find out that they blew their 506B deal and they really had some AngelList people in it. And the SEC is going to come back and say, and the lawyers are going to say, you got to go back and get waivers from every investor who invested thinking it was a quiet deal when it was actually a 506C deal. And that is going to be one hell of a mess. Don't bring me any 506C deals. I will not do any crowdfunded deals.
So I, not as the Seattle Angel Fund, but I personally work with Gil Pinchina's group of syndicates. It's the largest syndicate group on AngelList. With the largest deal we've done to date is BP. It's a used car marketplace. We did it's a $2 million deal with them. We don't. I can't say how every syndicate works, but we do a lot of due diligence. All the kind of the conversation that everyone here has had about how they go about doing due diligence is very similar with the Pinchina group of syndicates. We have a lot of different focuses, so we kind of have experts in each area to do a different level of focus. Many of the deals, have other angels already in the deals, and they're on their way to a venture capital round afterwards. So we're usually doing a bridge round or an A round. The most we've done is a B round. But we don't necessarily do as many on the seed side, just because of the size of the syndicate itself. There's just too much capital, too many investors. That Pinchina's brand name syndicate is $6 million currently. So it's right. I think it's still the number one. FG Angels and the Pinchina syndicate go back and forth all the time. But there's a lot of deals that happen that way. The way that you approach those investors and the way that you actually get a deal done, if they're a well-behaved syndicate, is really no different than what's happening with all these angel groups up here. You really are making a pitch to a group of investors who are doing due diligence. They're doing all the other same footwork. If it doesn't look and smell like a group that you are going to come pitch to up here, you're probably not getting a very well-run syndicate. And that's a real warning sign that would really lead to some of the things that Dan's talking about. That would be a problem for you later on. If it looks and smells more like a normal angel group, some of those things are a little bit more, I guess, structured and well understood by the folks running the syndicate. And so you're more likely, and not guaranteed, obviously, you're more likely to have less trouble down the road.
And to follow on with that, as you do seeking of outside money and they're doing due diligence on you, you should be doing as much due diligence on them to find out if they're the right match for you. And what he just said was, in your due diligence of the online stuff, do enough due diligence to find out if they're the right partner for you.
And of course, before you go down any of those crowdfunding roads, it's always wise to talk to your attorney. And if your attorney hasn't done 10 early stage company deals in the last year, find a different attorney. You need to find attorneys that are very, very familiar with this space. And if you need help with that, you can talk to anybody here. We all have lots of partners that do that. That's their specialty. And it's very important to find one that has that as a focus versus just a general attorney that knows how to write the documents. It's not the same thing by a long stretch.
So I just want to share that it may not be as good, but it's not as bad either, especially from the entrepreneur's point of view. Fundraising typically takes a huge amount of their time. So if they can somehow get a good lead investor who is willing to put his reputation on the line and then go to AngelList, makes a little more sense. But that doesn't mean it dissolves the risks. As an investor, we trust each other here because we all know what kind of due diligence we all do, and we share it. The more due diligence you do, the safer the deal gets. So if you can get to a point where you feel that level of comfort, then maybe it is okay. But in general, you have to be very careful.
All right. So, thank you very much. So I have a second question about crowdfunding that maybe perhaps it's an information question for me too. And just a week or two ago, the SEC promulgated a new regulation A+. Has anybody heard about A+? All right. From the little bit I've read about it, it's a crowdfunding opportunity for non-accredited investors, for companies to raise from non-accredited. And so it's still early in the game. It's probably not on the market. Well, I don't know if it's used yet, but I'm sure Dan has an opinion. But any of you have a thought about this new A+ and how you think it might affect equity markets?
Yeah.
So.
The traditional use of the A deals was for things like funding plays in movies. And they put together large syndicates of people to go and fund events like that. It was almost never used for a tech deal. In fact, for about 15 years, I think it was used like twice for tech deals any place in the U.S. And so again, in the Jobs Act, they singled it out as something that could help get more funding going for startups and put it in place. The problem is, there are many problems with it, mainly that it's more under state regulation than federal. Mm-hmm. And so you have to go to every state regulator in which you have an investor. It makes it much more complex because some states are a lot harder than others. They thought that this would be a fast track for very quick IPOs for startup companies. Hasn't materialized that way. The SEC has come up with new regs to try to make it happen. Look, you know, the nice thing about the angel investment market is last year in the United States, accredited investors put about $28 billion into companies. It works. You can get more and more arcane and try to do really complex things to try to raise your money. But why do you need to? I mean, stick with the basic things that work really well. Maybe I just have too much gray hair to try too many new things, but the complexities with some of these new securities regulations haven't even begun to be worked out yet, even if you're one of the best lawyers on the planet.
So the A+ stuff is really a registered offering. It's not an unregistered offering, and it comes with complications in terms of cost and reporting requirements and collection of things that for the very early stage companies seem awfully expensive and so therefore prohibitive. So an A+ seems like something that might be useful as an alternative to an IPO in a later stage in some way for certain kinds of companies, but for early stage, the seed stuff, I can't see how it works.
Dan, I did an A deal in the early 80s. It was tech, just so you know.
It was one of the very few.
Yeah, it did. But I do want to comment. I want to emphasize what Dan said. So I've been around this game a while, and all this new stuff is just going to be, it's just a big disaster waiting to happen. And what concerns me the most is, so they've come up with all these ways where non-accredited people can play, and there's going to be all kinds of problems, there's going to be all kinds of fraud, there's going to be all kinds of lawsuits, and then the Congress is going to get a hold of it and take it the other way, and maybe make it worse than it is right now, make it tougher. So to me, it's just one big disaster waiting to happen. Now, Alex and the other attorneys in the House might think it's interesting.
I haven't done one of those.
All right.
I just wanted to add. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
The difference on the A+ is there's two types. There's a type 1 and a type 2. The type 1, you can raise up to $20 million. You still have to register in every state, and you need to have not audited but reviewed financials. If you want to raise more than the 20 million, you want to raise 50 million and not register in every state, that works too, but then you have to have fully audited financials. So at that point, you're looking very much like a public company. You have audited financials that you're, and you're registered with the SEC versus the, per state registration with the lower size. So it really, that burden that John was talking about, the burden of having audited financials is a significant burden for a young company. So maybe a later stage company that might be good for, but then as Dan said, why go that route instead of the existing route that works really well?
Not only does it work, but remember the thinking process of your potential partners, which are the investors. They're not millennials 90+% of the time. They're, 40, 50, 60, 70 plus years old. They've been around for a long time. Are you going to try and educate them on both a new financing model as well as your business? You're adding additional complexities that bring you additional risk in building that relationship and ultimately acquiring the capital that they'd like to potentially contribute. So my thought process is keep things as simple as you possibly can so that they understand your deal, and compared to all the other investment opportunities, you might be able to stand out and build a trusting relationship that might produce fruit not just once for one business, but maybe a second or third business.
All right, thanks everybody. I think the bottom line is I hope you're getting the impression that if you are thinking about raising funding from investors, you need a very good securities attorney who can help you navigate the maze of all these regulations and the options. It's really important. So I know that people want to get to Q&A pretty quickly, and we'll do that. So I have one final question for you. And I'd like each panelist to answer this. Maybe we'll go down the line. We'll start with Dan here, since you got the hot seat. But this is more my question for the panelists is about what kind of what are your pet peeves about entrepreneurs, either in the application process or the presenting process or the follow-up process in raising angel funding?
Wow, tough question. I'll say a couple things. Number one is the place that I've seen more entrepreneurs sort of fail in this fundraising process is they want to educate their investor. They want to prove how smart they are. Look, if you get the meeting with us, we assume you know what you're doing and you're smart. The most important thing is please tell us what you do. Tell us what the company's goal is. Start with that. You don't have to educate us on everything. If we like the company and like what you're doing, we'll do diligence and find out all that stuff later. But start by telling us what you do. The second thing is something I think almost everybody here has said. Treat us as partners, not as banks. And then probably the single one most important thing I'll say is once you've taken outside money, your life has changed. While you're a private company, you don't have the obligation to send out a quarterly financial report, blah, 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 that you do as a public company. But you have that moral obligation. Communicate with your investors frequently. Make sure, good news travels fast, bad news travels faster. Treat us as partners and you'll be successful.
Do you want us each to answer?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess for plus all the things that Dan said, be coachable. It's really annoying when the entrepreneur comes in and goes, no, my company's worth $5 million. That's what I'm valuing it. And we tell them, no, you will not get funded at that level. And they persist, and then they don't get funding, and they wonder why. So it's be coachable. We've been here. We all have been in this industry for a while, and we know what the investors are willing to. And I guess our methodology is to, you don't want to harm the entrepreneur. We want you to hurt a little bit because we're investing our money up front for you. We want you to hurt a little, but we want you to be successful because if you fail, we lose our money. So we don't want you to fail, and you just have to understand that we're trying to help you to get the deal so that you hurt a little bit and we're giving you that high risk of our money. So be coachable.
I don't know if I have any pet peeves because I've actually raised money myself as well. I've been an angel investor myself. Everybody comes from different places and it's a learning process. We try and help people grow as a company that's trying to raise money as an entrepreneur as well. And we're just kind of all in this together, and people are coming from different points of view. And if they're weak in certain areas, we'll tell them they're weak in certain areas and what our investors are really looking for. And hopefully they will listen and build those long-term relationships.
I was going to start in the same way, which is I have been on the other side of the table. I've had to raise money and been told no a lot, so I have a lot of empathy for that. I think my job is not to dictate to entrepreneurs how they're supposed to be with respect to me or anything else in the world. But the one thing I would say is don't ask for permission. The one thing that investors should never be able to do is stop you from being an entrepreneur. So going to an entrepreneur or going to an investor and saying, if you write me a check, I'll do X, Y, Z. I'll quit my job. I'll have the courage of your convictions. And don't let the power of the investor stop you from doing what you need to do as an entrepreneur. And I think investors, likewise, shouldn't use the power that they have and they know they have to try to steer entrepreneurs. They should either do the deal or not do the deal, but not use the power of money to try to shape the business in a way that the entrepreneurs are ready to take it.
I have a couple items. One would be, do you listen? So my job at the Puget Sound Venture Club, I'm absolutely amazed. We have very explicit instructions. If you want to do us, here are the rules. At least 20-25% of the people can't do that. They can't follow our own rules, and so there's a message there. And my other comment would be, a lot of you people raise your hand about, you're here thinking about raising money. If you've got enough money to start a company and run it on your own for about a year, don't go out and raise money yet. I'm serious. I mean, if you can do it yourself, raising money is the last thing you want to do. Seriously. So if you don't have to raise money, don't do it.
I guess from a pet peeve perspective, it would be the entrepreneur who has not thought through their business completely. And so this is the entrepreneur who has thought through the technology, but when you ask them about how it's going to be distributed, they don't have a good plan. And it's not a hard thing to do, but think through all the facets of your business and be ready for those questions, and think about the risks from the investor's perspective that they're going to be taking on, and be ready to address those.
A lot of great points made here, so it's hard not to be repetitive. I guess I'll reinforce some points. If there were one pet peeve, it is when entrepreneurs sort of just totally stop communicating with you after they got the money, and then come back and look for money later. If they've kept you informed, if they've been a good partner, odds are good. If they haven't, odds are really bad. And you hope you sort of figure that out in the dialogue up front and how well they listen and so forth, but you don't always do.
So I guess that's the problem of trying to sit at the back. Most of the things are already said. I'll still add a couple of things. I think one of the key things I would like to see in entrepreneurs is for them to stay focused, believe in themselves, yet not be rigid and open enough to take each and every idea given by whatever feedback they can get from whoever they can get. And they have to be smart enough because they are the ones who build the business. They know exactly what they want to do. Sometimes even investors tend to sway them away because they think they're bringing in the money. They should have the say in the company. To an extent, it's correct. If it fits well into your strategy, yes, go ahead and do it. But otherwise, stay focused on what you're trying to do. Don't get distracted. Open and accept all feedback. The second thing I'd like to say is I've seen this happen over and over again. Sometimes entrepreneurs tend to get a little laid back. We all know it's all about selling. First you have to sell to investors to convince them what you're doing is right. And then you have to sell to your customers why they should buy what you're building. And then you have to sell to your potential employees. You want the best of the employees. But sometimes they feel, I have the money, I'll take it a little easy, or I'll press on the gas a little more. They'll get a little laid back, and these are the worst thing that an entrepreneur can do. So possibly want to focus on that more.
I think the thing that annoys me the most is when we have entrepreneurs who are all excited and all in a hurry, and then they cease to be strategic. And so they do something like look down the list there, and they apply to every single one of us, and in the next 2 months we'll see them all, and they're not ready at all, and they don't learn at all, because they all did it at once because they weren't strategic. clearly some of us are early and you should go to the early ones first. Some of us are middle and some of us are late. Some of us are focused. So don't apply to the medical guys if you're not a medical kind of thing. Don't apply to the clean tech guys if you're not doing clean tech. Do due diligence on us enough to know when strategically you will have the best chance to gain a champion, build relationships, and then learn what you need to do to get to the next level. Because this is a long run, a 10, 12-year run that you're involved in. And it's a lot more fun to do that with partners that understand you. And you won't get that chance if you hit everybody with a bad idea and have them all say no.
I'd only say don't treat an investor like they're in control. Especially after you've taken the money. That's the thing that I hate the most. You know, an entrepreneur who asks me what they should do with their business. I mean, they might value my opinion, but I'm a partner as an investor. I'm not someone who is telling them what to do. I don't have a controlling position in their business. When you go and try to seek out an investor, seek out a partner, whether it's a partner for a specific portion of your business, or whether you want them to, help you make connections, or whatever it happens to be. But you're looking for a partner. You're not just looking for a loan, right? So that's the only one that I'd say.
Your turn, Bryan.
Maybe that opens it up to questions.
I think Bryan wants to.
Okay. So we're done with the questions that I have, at least the ones I'm going to ask tonight. And so we're going to open it up to Q&A. And just in terms of timing, it's about 7:15, and this should run about half an hour. So we'll have some time at the end to have some informal networking among the folks here. So we need some volunteers with the microphones to go around. And Dave, you want to?
I need 2 matching mics. So let's see who's got the other one with the silver. Thank you. And I'm sorry.
All right. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome to direct your question to a specific panelist, or it could be in general. But we'll try to move through this fairly quickly. So if you have a question, raise your hand. If you don't, we'll go home. So, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. How important is who you know in the industry in order to raise funding?
I'm like,
You asking anyone in particular?
do you ask? Yeah.
Who do you want to answer?
Anyone's fine. Thank you.
I think it does help. It does help you get into the doors. But I think as soon as you're in, which probably is because of the relationship or the obligation of the person you know, then it's all about you. The minute you open your mouth, the minute you share your ideas, the minute you share your plans, your strategies, that's going to dictate funding.
Are you talking getting into one of our groups? Is that what you meant?
Yes, exactly.
It's absolutely irrelevant.
I love Seattle. I mean, the nice thing about Seattle is probably there's nobody on this panel who's more than one contact away. And we have open doors. You can get to any of us. It's a wonderful thing.
I think one of the things that you need to be aware of is that you're not searching for an angel investor. You're searching for a champion, somebody who loves you enough that they're willing to go do work for you and tell their friends and make their friends come to coffee meetings and do other things that they wouldn't normally do because they have other things they want to do with their life. And if you go to meetings and you touch people and you don't find that champion, like you leave early instead of doing the networking, then you've missed the opportunity to gain that champion. And so finding that champion early then changes the conversations with the rest of these groups.
All right, more questions? Excuse me. Got one over here. Right.
Hi. One of the main concerns, obviously, every entrepreneur has is that decision of how much equity for how much cash. And from my entrepreneurial perspective, I see creating a very, very large company in the long run. And how do I structure a deal that makes my angel investors really, really happy, while most importantly in the long term, I see keeping as much equity as possible.
So Bryan Brewer has a class on how to make your company fundable to an angel investor.
That's true.
So I'm not sure that you want to keep as much equity as possible. I think what you want to do is to gain the most money at the end. And 5% of $1 billion company is a lot better than 70% of a company that's $100 million. And so you'd like to find a way to make the result you want happen, whether or not it's about equity percentages or not. But you know that we're investing in you for the point that you are going to grow your company. So we want a 10x return. So that means that when we put in the 100,000, we expect you to have $1 million of results out of that. So if every time people put in money, you get 10 to 20 to 30 times growth in your company, you're on the right track. If you put in $10,000 and you get $12,000 of result out of that, you're not on the right track.
At the end of the day, it's about raising the money that you need within the time frame that you need it, because every opportunity is a closing door. So if you price it so that you can actually close it, then you price it correctly. In other words, if people aren't investing in your company because they think the pre-money is too high, then maybe the pre-money is too high. There's a lot of very complex models that you can use to pre-price your companies, and you can try all of them. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, the right price is the price at which you can close your money within a time frame that does not derail your process as a growing company.
There's a national report issued on angel investing called the Halo Report, which is issued every year. It's worth looking at. Nationally, for Series A, first money, and Series C, Series A rounds, the national average is about 2.3 million. The local average is slightly higher. I think we were 2.6 last year. And if you're trying to raise your first money and you're raising it at 10 million, you're in the third standard deviation. You're gonna have a lot of trouble raising it. So you got to look at it's a market like any other market. Look at it as a market. And then the second thing I'll say, and I've said this at a lot of events like this, and I've taught classes on this, Excel is your friend as an entrepreneur. Take a very simple-minded Excel spreadsheet. Project forward the waterfall to the other funding you'll have to do after your first one, and what you think your exit will be based on your business plan, and come up with a number that you think you'll make. It may be that after 5 to 10 years, you're only going to make $500,000. Don't do the business. It's that simple.
All right, we have another question in the back there.
So, I'd heard some numbers where it went something like this: that if as an angel you invested in like maybe just 5 or 10 deals, the math apparently showed that you were almost guaranteed to lose money. Whereas if you invested in maybe 60 or more deals, the math apparently showed that, I mean, this is all statistical data, that you would make a lot of money. And so is it that collectively what you're trying to do is trying to get to those numbers, like large numbers of deals, 60 plus, etc., by pooling your funds together? And if not, why not? I'm just curious.
So statistically, we believe the data from Rob Wilbank and believe that 20 deals gives you a 95% chance of hitting something that gets you reasonable returns. So that's what we teach at the Seattle Angel Conference.
That's the Rob Wilbank study says if you invest in 20 deals, your average rate of return is 27%. But what happens with most of for investors, on the investor side, putting on the investor hat, is if you have to take, for us, for an angel investor, 10% of your expected, or of your expendable income. So you take 10%, you divide that out over 5 years, you invest in 4 companies a year. That's an average investor. So 4 deals a year that we're going to look at over a 5-year period. The problem is if you only invest in 1 or 2 deals, you don't see your returns for 5 or 6 years if they're going to make it. If they're going to fail, it's going to be in the first couple of years. If they're going to break even, like year 3, 4. So you have to be in it for the long term. So angel investors do diversify. We have to. And I think that's why there's so many funds popping up, because it's just an easy way to diversify your money in your portfolio. So.
Yeah, that's what I would add. Instead of trying to do it on your own, I would rather go to one of these organizations or group where more people get to do more due diligence, which can eliminate certain risks that you may have missed while looking up the company. So that definitely is a way that to mitigate the risk to an extent. It doesn't, of course, eliminate it.
Traditionally, both VC and angels have a similar portfolio model. And that's that if you do, in the math, you can go through the math and do a lot of different answers, but anything less than about 16 companies over the course of a portfolio probably is not going to get you any sort of statistics. There's some who say it's 35, Rob says it's 27, others say it's 60. Depends what you want to do. The problem with a fund only is, let's say you put $100,000 in a fund, and over the course of 10 years, it does okay. You don't get a decent enough return to make it worth the effort. That's why so many angel funds have so much trouble. Angel funds are a good complement to doing your own investing, but not a substitute for it. And if you're going to invest, try to be part of a group like one of these, because the other statistic that people haven't mentioned is Rob Wilbank's data, which is the best angel statistical data out there, says the number one correlative factor to success in an angel deal is the amount of due diligence up to 20 hours. And I don't know the statistics for the other people on the stage, but at the Alliance of Angels, after about four to 5 years, more than 90% of our deals are still alive. So one thing you can look at is what is the total return on your best deals, but you can also look at how many go to less than one. And if you can eliminate the ones that go to less than one, you really help the total return on your portfolio.
Thank you.
All right, more questions? Was there one over here? Yeah. Here, Dave will bring you the mic to you, please.
So I'm working on developing a technology idea, and a couple of questions. So one is, it looks like I'm going to need some kind of permit to be able to do testing. So it seems that I have to get an LLC or something. What's the right choice for, I'm just a guy developing a technology. I'm going to have some kind of label to get this permit under. Should I pick, do I need a C Corp or an LLC, or what's the right starting point?
So it sounds like it's you and not a team.
Just me so far.
Yeah, and you don't know what kind of business you're creating.
Well, actually, I know what the technology is.
How big will your business be in 5 years?
Good question. Yeah, don't know that much
so
about
it sounds to me like you're not ready to do it and that you need to go do some classes. And there are lots of different classes that go through that. There's some workshops at Hub. There's some at SURF. We do them at the community colleges. So,
and I'm actually not asking about whether I'm ready to actually go and get investments right now. Right now, what I need to figure out is, because this is a long lead time.
I understand.
To be able to get a permit, I have to get that first.
You have to create an entity.
Yes.
But the creation of the entity creates where it's going in the future. The simple, stupid answer is, if you're planning to take outside money, you should be a C Corp. And if you're not planning to take outside money, an LLC makes it simple. But that's the simple, stupid answer.
If you're not planning on taking outside money for some time, start with anything?
Yeah, you can always convert it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Just go get a good lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there any securities attorneys in the group? Right. Well, come on, Alex, raise your
Any of the
hand.
attorneys that are working with or through probably most of these groups, they will give you some time for free to talk. They've got a customer acquisition cost as well, and you can almost always get an hour of consultation for free, because they also are trying to build trusting long-term relationships. So don't be afraid to call attorneys that are on our websites that are affiliated with our groups. They want to build their book of business. They want to talk to you. They want to help you, and they've got that built into their model, that free hour for initial consultation. So don't be afraid to call and talk to multiple attorneys. And as the CEO, yes, you get to make the final decision. So you got to gather that information, but the information is out there, it's available, and they want to talk to you. So just pick up the phone.
Right, great, thank you.
Okay.
We got one over
more
here.
questions? We got one over here. We'll take this next, and then Alex.
So, hypothetical company. Sorry to do this to you. I'm sure you get these questions all the time. MVP comes out in a month. Revenue generation starts within 30 days after that. Profitable in 8 or 9 months. would like to raise $1 million in a single round and never get any more money again at a $4 million valuation. Is that ridiculous? Oh, and I should tell you, exit in 5 years, generating $45 million a year on $12 million a year in operating costs. So $33 million profit annually in 5 years. Is a $4 million valuation right now with an MVP almost finished ridiculous? Is it possible?
I wouldn't say it's ridiculous. It's not that far out there. I mean, like I said, if you can attract the money, it's not too far out there. You know, the most important thing is you believe, you know, the valuation and can justify the valuation, make an extremely strong argument. Like I tell people all the time, you are the face of the company, and you're the person that's building that relationship, and the investor's looking to see if you are the guy or gal to actually take this company all the way through all the hills, the valleys, the walls, the troughs, all that it takes. And if you can make that compelling of an argument, then maybe you are that right guy, that gal. That's what they're looking to do. The other thing is, if you're that far along, well, that's not really. I'll just leave it at that, actually.
Just a follow-up question. Is it reasonable to believe that in Seattle, working with your groups or individual investors, that it would be possible to raise $1 million from 2 or 3 investors alone rather than spending 9 months chasing down 20 different people to pool money together to come up with $1 million?
Well, that goes to that other guy's question. You know, whereas you don't really need to know people beforehand, but to do something like that, you kind of do.
I think in the last 4 or 5 years, you probably have found a couple deals that have done that, but it's been somebody who's done a deal before. The advantage of coming to one of the groups instead of trying to do it on your own is you can come to an Alliance of Angels meeting if you're selected, present your company, and you'll have 80 investors in the room listening to your pitch. And you probably won't get $1 million from 3 of them or 4 of them. We do have members who, as a rule, tend to invest $250,000 in every deal they look at that they decide to do. But that's not common. Most angel investors, we caution them to invest between $50,000 and $100,000, or between $25,000 and $100,000 per company, because no matter what you say, I think you're going to find a lot of skepticism among people that this is the only money you will ever need. You're gonna have people look you in the eye like I will and say, yeah, nice try. We know you're going to be back in 12 months or 14 months or 18 months, and I'm going to reserve half of what I'd invest to invest then.
Then you're running the risk of losing credibility because you're a little bit too pie-eyed. And I mean, love the confidence, love the bravado, love the belief, love all that stuff. But it just happens so frequently, and investors understand that. And the last thing I was going to say is that you're comparing yourself against other deals. Don't forget that investors are looking at other deals. While you're bleeding your deal, and your deal is the best deal on the planet, and you're putting your heart and soul into it, it's a different perspective that investors are coming from. Just don't forget that.
So from the Seattle Angel Conference point of view, I teach what's the evidence that the team can run a business, and what's the evidence that the market cares that they succeed at running the business. You don't have a product yet, you don't have an MVP yet, so we don't have evidence that you're producing a team that's functional, and you have no traction with the market, so we have no evidence of that. So from the way that we're teaching, you would be low on the list. There are other people that are willing to invest more in dreams than what I talk about, and you would have to find those people. But really, with the lean startup methodology, you ought to be able to close some deals with people before your MVP, and you should be able to prove that your team knows what a business is before you get down that road, and you should come with that evidence rather than the hope.
You know, one thing people haven't talked about, but I did think about that, Chris, is getting the first money in is always the most difficult thing to do. And quite often companies will come and they'll say, okay, I'm raising $1.5 million, but I really only need $500,000 for the first 9 months. Well, why raise $1.5 million? Well, raising money is hard, but you can raise the $1 million, then raise another round over the next several months at a much higher valuation, give away smaller pieces of the company. So don't be afraid to raise money in multiple tranches you might get money from the same people multiple times once you prove your progress to them. So there's a lot of ways to do this versus just the one traditional, okay, it's this much money and we're going to get all the money we need. Shorter milestones can be very, very profitable and valuable for everybody, more successful.
All right, let's take a question from Alex over here, and Adam, we'll get you next.
A lot of Seattle VCs have closed up shop over the years. Is that a cyclical problem? How much of a problem is it for your investors, and how much of a problem is that for the entrepreneurs in the room?
Well, I'm one of the ones who closed up shop.
Yep.
I think it's a business model problem. First of all, you can start a company in a lot less money. So the traditional VC model of having to raise 10 to 20 million to start a company is gone, probably forever. The second problem is that for all but the top tier VCs, the ones that Chris pursues on his deals, the business model of making money as an investor in a VC fund has gone to hell. I think when I raised my fund, there were something like 4,000 VCs in the United States, and last count I heard was under 400. There's a reason for it. I don't think that old model is coming back. But the good news is that through angel groups, which you could argue are the new early stage VCs, we're funding companies through to liquidity. There's one company I'm involved with that has more than 4 million of angel capital in it. And another one is still very early stage, but has raised well over 2 million. And it's all from angels. So I think the model has changed forever.
So just real quickly, it's certainly in the life sciences business, the strategics, the corporates have stepped in. They are hungry for product. So if you are in that sector, they are the new venture capitalists from my perspective.
Yeah, and for the other sector-specific group, it's very much the same in clean tech. I mentioned in the introductions that we've seen strategic investors pick up some of the slack from the VCs, and the angels playing a more important role. Being again a nationwide or really North America-wide group, we also try to nurture the relationships that we can with some of the VCs that still do invest in clean tech deals, and that's part of the reason that we're having that sector focus. We want to have that those skills and that expertise among our members, but also that network for those deals that do need additional funding, that we can provide some of those connections.
Echoing some of Dan's comments, there's been sort of a barbell effect in venture, which is Silicon Valley has become the Wall Street of innovation finance. So if any meaningful growth investment is going to come from Silicon Valley first, and then late stage is going to come from New York. The gap in the market here, and this panel represents that, is really at the seed stage. So from sort of zero to Series A is where you need boots on the ground money who can look investors in the eye and stay close to the opportunities, the entrepreneurs, and that's what everyone in this room does. We are all, well, not all of us with the same focus, but several of us in the room are suppliers to the venture capital market, but we don't expect the venture industry to be here. We know that those investors will come here for good deals, and I think Seattle's had a great track record of attracting what I would call foreign direct investment, high quality institutional investors who will come here for growth stage opportunities. But it's our work collectively in this room to develop these opportunities so that they're venture grade, they're venture worthy. Then the money will always flow.
Yeah, I think I want to echo that. It's, at least in my experience, I've seen that there's been a lot of new angel groups, including tags, although we've been investing before without an organization. But it's much easier to get angel money nowadays because there's more on promise, more on idea, whatnot. But when you come to the next stage, it becomes really challenging. Because as it is, there are fewer investors from A to B, as it just becomes that much more work for entrepreneurs to come up with the substantiation required. And that's when, unfortunately, I see most of the companies, many of the entrepreneurs going down south, which somehow need to change in the Seattle area.
Okay, Adam? You get a mic over there for Adam?
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead, yeah.
First of all, thank you, actually. Tonight's been wonderful hearing from you. Sherry, the question's to anyone, but Sherry made a comment that if you're an impact company, it buys you 30 extra seconds in the pitch, which triggered the question, like, how long is a pitch, and what's maybe the pipeline from first contact to the full board?
I love this one. So, what's interesting? So, you're talking about from the beginning to the final product. So, when you come to deal screening, like just with Keiretsu, and I think most of the groups do the similar process. Deal screening, there's no cost, there's no charge. You come to deal screening, you present for 7 minutes. You have 7 minutes of Q&A. We send you out of the room and we talk about you for the next 7 minutes. Then we send you an evaluation at the end of it, showing what your high points and low points were. We then select a couple of those companies to come back and present to the forum. Now at the forum, you have 10 minutes. So 10 minutes of pitch, 10 minutes of Q&A. We send you out of the room, we talk about you, come back. So I think 10 minutes is typical, wouldn't you say? 10 minutes is typical for a pitch. That extra 30 seconds, though, is just kind of a gift. We're playing with this idea. If they're really making an impact and they're qualified to be at Keiretsu, they're obviously going to make money and they're worthy of raising funds. I just think it's something new that I'm watching on the horizon that I think we're going to try to hang on to.
I'll add for Eliminate, we, like everybody else, we have a screening process. Obviously, you do it over WebEx, you get the same 10 minutes as you would in the real presentations. If you are screened in, you have those 10 minutes, and then instead of doing Q&A, we actually we typically have 3 presenters, we send all of them out. While we say funny things about it. No, we discuss internally and we caucus, because otherwise it always tends to be 1 or 2 or 3 people that always ask the questions, and we find that by discussing among ourselves, we come up, typically we think, with better, more interesting questions, and then we bring the presenters back, and then they get their 6 to 10 questions to answer in the time allotted. And then the other thing that we do is that we pre-schedule an hour and a half due diligence meeting. So your 10 minutes plus Q&A is really just to get enough investors interested to show up to that meeting time that they already know is scheduled. They already have it as tentative on their calendar.
So, back when dinosaurs were roaming Seattle, and I started doing this, our first few meetings at the Alliance of Angels were dinner meetings, and each company got about 35 minutes to present. And it was an absolute disaster. And when I was asked to try to take this over and make it work, I looked around the room and I said, we have 100 people at our meetings. Your reasonable expectation as an entrepreneur would be to get 10, maybe 12 of them interested in your company to invest. Invert that. That says there's like 80, 85 people in the room who are bored stiff after about 10 minutes because they've already made up their mind this is not their deal. It's disrespectful to you as an entrepreneur, disrespectful to the investors to make people sit through that, and then people will wander away and you don't get their attention. So we started this 10-minute thing because everybody can be polite for 10 minutes, and any good entrepreneur can tell their story in 10 minutes, and it's a marketing pitch. It's good to get people to sign up and do the hour-and-a-half follow-up due diligence. So there's no magic in the 10 minutes. And there's nothing natural about doing a 10-minute pitch. But that's what you must, as an entrepreneur, learn to be able to do. Tell your story very precisely and carefully and quickly, remembering that the goal here is to tell them about the deal and why they want to invest to make money.
So at TAGS, we do things a bit differently. Obviously, we have the same 10-minute pitch followed by a 10-minute Q&A. But our screening meetings are pretty interesting. They're pretty unstructured. The entrepreneur gets about half an hour, and we just are about 10 screening committee members around him and just tell him to tell his story. We don't even require a presentation at that point. The idea is to get as deep as we can in the story and learn as much as we can about the person, about the team, about the product, about the solution, how deep, and you can go way deeper than you can with a pitch and a few questions, which could be very well rehearsed. So pretty much at the end of the screening, we kind of have an idea whether this company would be invested or not, and that's how we shortlist companies to come and present to the membership, where we have about 100 attendees or so.
I was working with a company earlier today, and as I try and tell all of them, you should have a 5-minute pitch, you should have a 1-minute pitch, you should have a 3-minute pitch, you should have a 15-second pitch. if you have a 15-second pitch, you can do all the rest. But that's probably the hardest one to do. So we do 5-minute pitches with a 3-minute Q&A. But we choreograph it really, really tightly. We'll actually spend between 5 and 15 hours working with a company to make sure that they're as ready as they possibly can be. And because our customers are our investors, and we want to make sure that they are very well entertained and see some of the best deals in town. They want to fly in, see the great deals, and fly right back out. So our job is to prepare those companies so that they have a nice trip, if you will. So, be prepared to do all kinds of pitches. I don't think there's a magic formula. 5 minutes is actually a very long sales pitch. If you think about it that way, that's, 5 minutes is a really long sales pitch to have somebody sit there and listen to your sales pitch, and that's really what it is. So whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, you can do it. It just takes preparation time. And if you are really serious, you'll put that time in, and you'll be able to do it. It really works.
At the Seattle Angel Conference, we screen based on the Gust profile, cut half out. Here 3-minute presentations with 3-minute Q&A, cut half out. Here 10-minute pitches, 10-minute Q&A, cut half out. But the thing that the people don't seem to get is that the point of each pitch is to be in the next round. So the goal is to be invited to the next meeting, not to get the whole deal done. You don't have to tell us everything. You just have to tell us enough to be in the next round that people keep going back to the conversation. So you should have this multiple levels of things figured out. And the hardest part for us is when people do a 3-minute pitch in a 10-minute pitch time frame, which is a horrible pitch. So make sure you've figured out what the thing you need to say to get the next meeting is.
All right, next question. Adam, do you have the mic? Yes.
Yes. You mentioned earlier that some entrepreneurs will take the shotgun approach and just approach every angel fund, all at once and shout it from the rooftop. But I actually run into a lot of situations that are kind of the opposite. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs that have a great idea, but they're so secretive and they're so protective over it that they don't, they're almost afraid to talk to investors, or they're afraid to talk to potential business partners, or sometimes even talent. And a lot of times I see the great ideas dry up because the market shifts, they've waited too long, or somebody else comes out and does it quicker. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that scenario a little bit.
Yes, it happens. So if you can't sell, if you don't talk about what you're doing. If you can't talk about what you're doing, you can't attract the resources you need, and nobody's interested. So you have to tell that story. I don't, and I don't think anyone here will sign an NDA, so you're not going to be able to manage it. Just don't talk about the secret sauce. Talk about the other parts of the business that are important. And if you as a person are afraid of losing your thing because the idea is more important than the execution and relationships, then you're in the wrong business.
Again, it is wise to seek a certain amount of counsel around things that are secret saucy. And so you time your filings and your recording of your patents or patentable ideas correctly. Once that's taken care of, it's beyond extraordinarily rare that any angel group or angel investor wants anything to do with building a company to put you out of business. It just doesn't happen. So consider this, whether the fear of trust is more from the entrepreneur themselves and a personal thing than a piece of reality. Because the reality piece is that risk doesn't seem to exist at any measurable level.
One thing I'd like to add is, it's kind of hard for us to meet someone for the first time and try and trust the person. So I think it's very important for the entrepreneurs to network, to get known in the community. If we've seen you a couple of times, even if we haven't heard you, that brings in a level of comfort. And the investment only happens when the investors feel that comfort. And if you can engage and excite them, otherwise it's going to be very tough. Even with a good idea, it can die easily.
So not to terrify you, but 90% of our deals come from within Keiretsu. So they come from other Keiretsu members or serial entrepreneurs within the Keiretsu organization. So only 10% of you will have a chance to get in if you're not recommended. I mean, that's the reality of our group, but we're later stage. Some of the earlier stage, like these guys down here, they're going to look at you earlier. But at the later stage companies, it's much harder to get in, and it mostly comes from within because we have to know and trust you. It's a huge point.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Are there any takers? All right, we have one right here. Okay.
This is for you, Dan. So, I love Seattle also. I want to stay in Seattle. But when it comes to internet startups like and apps and websites, Silicon Valley can take something from that arena and make it big. There hasn't been a history of Seattle doing that. Is it because they're lucky with certain companies they come across, or has Seattle just not been very supportive in that?
That's actually a great question. We've had some big companies here. I mean, the Alliance of Angels had terrific exits out of companies like Clarisonic, before that In Situ, Snap-in. We've had our series of successes here. One of the Alliance of Angels companies that we did the very first seed round in was DocuSign. They filed their S1 last year, and I thought I was going to be very happy. They pulled it back because they raised $250 million for their private money for their international expansion. Maybe next year they'll actually go public, and I'll see a check out of it. But you're right. I mean, the problem is, and Chris alluded to this as well, the expansion capital is somewhat, there is a funding gap here. When we analyze the Alliance of Angels results alone, and we invest about $10 million a year, we recognize that there's probably another 10 to 20 million that we could usefully deploy into those companies if we had the capital capacity in our group. And these are for our best companies. These are the ones that we like and invest in. I don't know what the answer is going to be longer term, but it's why you've seen such a consolidation of capital in Silicon Valley and New York. And yes, Silicon Valley venture capitalists will come to Seattle. But man, it's hard to get them here. They don't want to get on planes. Some of my best friends in the venture industry down there, I'll call up with a deal and they said, can we put 10 million in the company now? No, it's not ready for 10 million. Come back and see me when it's ready to take 10 million. And I'm on the board of another company where the venture capitalist in the valley is pillaging the local investors because they can. So it's a really tough problem here. And I think that we just will have to build companies a little differently here because of it. It's not the answer I'd want, but it's the answer I see.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I think most of the panelists will stick around for a few minutes to shake hands and say hello to everybody. Let's give them a big hand for being here tonight. Thank you.